Burkina Faso is located south of the Sahara Desert and north of the tropical jungles of Western Africa. Its inhabitants are the descendants of an endless string of tribes that share a common history. A history that began with the founding of the Mossy Empire 500 years ago. Today, its ancient splendor, traditions, and beliefs live on in a country full of contrasts. To the north, we find a city which is sacred for Muslims. The small town of Bani features 7 adobe mosques. They are all dedicated to Islam, a religion that arrived in Burkina Faso from across the Sahara Desert. To the south, animism is practiced. Each tribe lives according to a complex philosophy based on ancestor worship. Burkina Faso is a land of fortified villages, of sanctuaries and fetishes. Here, every event can be explained by a reason that is written in the great beyond. Death is just another stage in the journey of life. Poverty is the norm, and water is life itself. This is a country studded with villages steeped in cultural tradition, whose identity is made manifest through music. Burkina Faso gained its independence in 1960. Its name means Land of Dignity. The Mossy monarchy is one of Africa's most powerful, claiming the territory in the center of the country. Its traditions have survived more than 5 centuries. Each year at harvest's end, hundreds of people head towards the palace in the city of Kaya to pay their taxes to the master of these lands. Representatives from the 52 local villages flood each trail dressed in their best finery and riding their highest quality modes of transport. With very few exceptions, this means nothing more than an old bicycle. The meeting place is this old building, home to the Prince of Kaya, Naaba Zagre, the highest-ranking representative of the Mossy people in this region. For days, palace workers have been putting on the finishing touches, making sure the reception goes smoothly. One essential element is gunpowder, made in the traditional manner by the prince's gunsmiths. First, they burn wood, and then they cover it so that the oxygen will be consumed. This will eliminate all humidity and make the fuel more powerful. For their part, the women of the harem are charged with all domestic tasks. The most important chore on this harvest festival day is the preparation of the prince's wardrobe. Today, his clothing is made by the best tailors in Paris. But there was a time when the prince's wives spun their own cotton thread and sewed 2 different tunics, one for civil acts and another for religious functions. Once the charcoal has been prepared, saltpeter and sulfur are added, and the mixture is ground together in a mortar until the gunpowder is ready. This chore is nothing more than a hobby now, but years ago it was of utmost importance. The Mossy had to protect their borders from enemy tribes at all costs. This gunpowder is not high quality, but then the guns it will be fired from aren't exactly the latest models either. These old shotguns have become mere noisemakers. They aren't worth much more nowadays. The riflemen are responsible for announcing the arrival of the prince, deafening the crowds with thunderous salutes. Shea butter is prepared in the palace kitchens, located in the women's wing. This traditional Mossy product has been discovered by European cosmetics companies in the last few years. Leaflets that accompany the small jars sold on the internet speak of the many beneficial skincare properties found in shea butter. But this part of the world has to satisfy its more basic needs before it can think about aging skin. Shea nut is a staple in the traditional diet in this part of the country. It is used to make nutritious butters and a thick oil which is used to fry food. Ironically, in spite of the prices brought by shea butter in the cosmetics market, the women in one of the world's poorest countries use this valuable product for cooking. When the big day arrives, the court dons its finest vestments. Ever-present musicians escort the prince wherever he goes. Nabazagri receives visitors from his throne, where he is guarded by two young men, one of whom holds the royal scepter. The chiefs from all 52 villages report to their master to pay their taxes. A certain percentage of their harvest, livestock, or cotton cloth is due. Most of the population has descended from the farmers who lived in this region before the arrival of the Mossy. They are considered plebeians and are called Nyonyose. One step up on the social scale are the Nakomse, descendants of the Mossy nobility. They occupy the administrative posts that oversee political and economic matters in the area. Area blacksmiths are a class apart. Considered artists, they once lived in separate neighborhoods and only married members of their own caste. Their work consisted of making weapons, jewelry, sculptures, and ritual masks. They had the blessing of local rulers and were looked upon with a mixture of fear and respect by the rest of the population. Using arms like this one, made in the foundry, Mossy troops overcame enemy tribes and founded the city of Ouagadougou. These master artisans continue to play a significant role in society. They no longer make weapons, using their talents to make farming tools and ceremonial figures instead. Preceded by the roar of gunfire, the prince and his entourage move toward the palace's rear esplanade. This is where he will receive the largest groups. In the 16th century, Moro Naba founded the Mossy Kingdom. Starting then and continuing until the 19th century, the Mossy ruled over a vast territory thanks to military might and to marriages that were arranged between noblemen and the daughters of tribal chieftains. When the Upper Volta region was colonized by the French, the Mossy were sent to work on plantations in Ivory Coast. After gaining independence, a member of this ethnic group was chosen to serve as the first president of Burkina Faso, and the monarchy regained its power over the people. The kingdom is divided up into 5 districts. The most important of these is Ouagadougou, where 37 straight generations of Mossy kings have occupied the throne. The monarchy continues to claim many traditional privileges. The king holds the deciding vote in local elections. He is the element that binds together all the Mossy people, the largest ethnic group in the country. Outside the palace, the Nyonyose await the prince. Mossy society is quite diverse. Rulers are descendants of the kingdom's founders, but the society itself is made up of several different ethnic groups, including the Dogon, Kuruma, and Gurmanche. Together, natives are known as Tengabibisi, or Children of the Earth. When Naaba Zagre makes his appearance, the final part of the celebration begins. The commoners dance before their sovereign rulers. They are reenacting a scene that has been repeated for more than 500 years, confirming the ongoing power of this ancient African monarchy. For 2 days, the palace grounds are converted into a marketplace where people from all 52 of Kaya's villages come together. Products from all over the region are bought and sold in hundreds of tiny stalls. Families take this opportunity to meet up with old friends and to arrange marriages that will take place in the coming year. But the scarcity of goods sends a clear message that the excess and wealth of the Mossy nobility conceal a very different reality, in which people are concerned only with fleeing from hunger and misery. Outside the Mossy Kingdom, life for the various tribes that inhabit Burkina Faso has been marked by their relationships with the dominant ethnic group. The Kassena territory is located to the south, near the border with Ghana. This is one of the country's most developed ethnic groups. Most members of the population are able to read and write. Kassena dwellings are true works of art, as much for their style as for the decorative elements found on their walls. Dwellings are composed of several mud houses, which are adorned with geometric figures. Each drawing has a special meaning. There are clan symbols, fetishes, good luck charms, and more. The houses are as tidy and well organized on the inside as they are on the outside. This is where each family keeps its few belongings. The main room might be called a kitchen, but it is actually more of a pantry where grain is stored in ceramic pots that keep out the damp as well as the insects. From the rooftops, flat surfaces which are perfect for drying grain, we can see how the Kassena sense of order and aesthetics extends to the farthest corners of the village. It is the women who are responsible for the curious designs found on these houses. Each year, they repair and decorate the most deteriorated walls. But the decoration is only the last step in an endless process of conservation. First, a paste is prepared using cow dung and crushed legumes. A thick layer is then applied, which will waterproof the house and keep it cool. The drawings are made with charcoal powder. While it is being prepared, a kind of varnish is made using cooked vegetables. Once the first layer has dried, a second coat is applied. This one is prepared using orange clay, giving the village its characteristic color. Starting several years ago, these dwellings became the center of a prosperous business. Towns like Zeko, Tangasoko, and Bongo now attract numerous tourists and travelers and are well known for their tribal drawings. Kassena society is not stratified either socially or politically. Decisions that will affect the community are made by a council of elders made up of the village's oldest members. Wisdom and experience are highly prized. This dance shows the life cycle acted out to the sound of drums and whistles. Elders dance, and youngsters imitate their moves, showing the importance of following in the footsteps of the experts. Younger members are constantly learning and slowly start to make their own decisions. Older members do not readily step aside. Their weapons are knowledge and experience. The young may be strong, but only with the advice of their elders can they achieve the wisdom necessary to guide their people. Another interesting interesting custom is the first part of the wedding ceremony, which consists of kidnapping the bride. Marriages are arranged by both families, but among the Kasena, tradition lends a touch of romance and adventure to the relationship. A friend of the bride is charged with setting the trap, finding an excuse to take the future wife out of the village. The groom's friends are waiting on the trail. They rush toward her and carry her off to the home she will share with her future husband. Several days later, the wedding is held. The history of the Kasena people consists of a succession of territorial battles with neighboring tribes. According to legend, the tribe descended from 3 brothers who founded the city of Navoro, now called Navrongo, located in northern Ghana. The first brother learned to build houses, and the second became a hunter. Using spears made by blacksmiths, he killed the most dangerous animals in the forest. The third brother became a farmer, raising the crops that would feed his people. Today, hunting and farming still play a leading role in the Kasena economy. Drums bring bad news. An ancient hunter has died. The entire community is being called to his funeral. The death of an elder means the disappearance of a keeper of wisdom. All of the young people are deeply affected. Among the Kasena, hunting is more than just a search for food. It is a way of gathering knowledge about nature and the forest. A minstrel sings of the old hunter's many exploits. He reminds the crowd that the dead achieve a level of power in the great beyond that is at least as great as what they have known on earth. When a powerful man dies, a powerful spirit is born. To the rhythm of the drums, all those in attendance dance frenetically, competing to express their pain. The burial will take place with the last ray of sunlight. The deceased will be placed in the family vault and will become a spirit capable of representing his family before the Creator God. As we move toward the north, the forests begin to disappear, giving way to great prairies and bush-studded plains. The Sahara Desert can be felt in the dry climate, in the heat, in the sand whipped up by the wind, and in the local customs. As we draw closer to the northern border, the influence of Islam becomes more and more evident. Sandy trails fade away into the horizon, lost in the harmattan, the dry dust carried here from the Sahara by the trade winds. Near the city of Bani, there is a brick factory. From dawn to dusk, workers mix mud with straw. Using traditional methods, they make thousands of rectangular bricks, identical to those used in the construction of the country's most esteemed architectural gems. Islam entered Burkina Faso from across the Sahara Desert in the early 11th century, and the city of Bani became a spiritual capital. Years later, a local pivotal figure had a revelation. He returned from a pilgrimage to Mecca, convinced that he was a new prophet to Allah, and determined to build 7 mosques in the city. Their facades are adorned with human figures, and all of them face the great central mosque. They do not face Mecca, as is customary. These motifs make the 7 mosques of Bani unique in the Islamic world. Behind the walls of the great central mosque, we find the local Quranic School. Here, children learn to read with these small wooden boards, which feature the sacred writings of the Quran. The school is so poor, it doesn't even have walls. There is no schedule, no grade division, and girls are not allowed. The only subject these boys will ever study is Islam. Further north, we come upon the encampments of the Sahel Belt. These are nomadic tribes that move about with their flocks within a vast territory. Their traditional way of life changed radically when Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso established their borders. Those political lines put an end to seasonal migration. Herders were forced to plant crops and establish permanent settlements where they could store the grain from their meager harvests. The marketplace in the city of Dori is the most important in the region. This is the gateway to the desert, the first in a string of mythical cities like Agadez, Timbuktu, Tamanrasset, and Ouarzazate. The north of Burkina Faso faces the Sahara Desert, an immense empty space that has nevertheless always been an important trade route for camel caravans transporting goods, cultures, religions, and legends. And of all of those legends, the most fascinating tells of the blue men of the desert. In every foundry in town, there is a man who stands tall in an indigo turban and says he knows the secret to making the takoba and telik, the famous sword and dagger of the Touareg. The northern region of Burkina Faso is populated with people who claim to be descendants of those Touareg, who may have been light-skinned at one time, but who gradually married women from sub-Saharan tribes. Even so, it seems more likely that the herdsmen who inhabit the poorest lands in one of the world's poorest countries belong instead to one of the many tribes who were subdued by the Touareg. Legend speaks of free and powerful men. But the history of the Touareg in the 20th century is a sad one, full of defeat, persecution, and slaughter. Today, the descendants of the Touareg live in squalid settlements with no land or wealth. Mounted on their camels, all they can do is flee from hunger. Other groups, like the Bela, were once the slaves of the Touareg. Influenced by their masters, the Bela learned the Tamashek language and converted to Islam. In the 1960s, the French colonies achieved their independence and established new borders. The Touareg were now a minority in Libya, Algeria, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, and their power disappeared. The Bela took on the look of their former masters. They effectively became Touareg, proudly sporting turbans of indigo blue and dancing to the sound of music from the other side of the Sahara, played on vihuelas and drums. Burkina Faso only stands out on lists of the poorest countries in the world. Poverty, neglect, and a lack of investment are found alongside the many sandy tracts that crisscross the country. But under this soil, there are extremely valuable raw materials, like gold. Its exploitation is in large part illegal. Abandoned mines stand open, allowing prospectors to explore their galleries in search of small quantities of gold dust. In the southeastern part of the country, the same search is taking place on the banks of several rivers. Here, the water current carries along minuscule quantities of the valuable mineral. Men, women, and children scratch in the mud, sifting through tons of sterile red earth. Later, they will sell the tiny quantities of gold they find to traders. On the Hill of Gold, many Lobi women spend the entire day sifting sand. The authorities have prohibited this activity. Every year, many prospectors lose their lives buried in landslides. But this is the only life these unfortunate women have ever known. After working for hours, the bottoms of their buckets almost never sparkle with gold. And when they do, the treasure they find is nearly invisible. Once a week, in the shade of this tree, a small marketplace is set up. A handful of traders buy gold here for ridiculously low prices. Most of the time, the prospectors are uneducated widows with children to care for. This is a form of modern slavery. The dealers who cheat them on a daily basis are slaves in turn to groups of other more powerful men. These men strip the country of its riches and abuse its inhabitants. It is a vicious cycle from which no one ever escapes. This Senufo dance recalls another form of slavery. The women perform, recreating the long lines of slaves who were sold by slave traders to European traffickers. Southeast Burkina Faso is the country's most ethnically diverse area. Groups like the Senufo, the Bobo, and the Lobi came to these territories in their flight from the Mossy. But what they found here was a threat that was much worse: slave traffickers. More than 20 million human beings were taken from this region and sent to plantations in the New World. A drama that lives on in our collective memory. This is Gnoil, a witch whose magic made it possible for the Lobi to settle in this area. The figure is located in a house just a few kilometers from the border with Ivory Coast, known as the Spirit Cave. Over the years, this has become a museum dedicated to magic. There are hundreds of fetishes here, as well as all kinds of spiritually charged objects. Legend has it that Gnoili protected the Lobi in their struggle with other tribes, and she drove the slave traders out of these lands. What is certain is that thousands of Lobi youngsters were snatched from their homes and enslaved. As far as struggles with other peoples, the history of Burkina Faso is a succession of tribal wars that left each ethnic group in the territory it now occupies. But these historical facts do not take away from the legendary witch's power. Lobi elders do not remember defeat. The force of magic in this sanctuary is quite powerful. It has become not only a spiritual center for Lobi culture, but a pilgrimage destination. Men, women, and children wait to be received by the Seer. The son and grandson of prophets, his power and fame reach far beyond Lobi borders. All curses originate in the great beyond and can only be exorcised by undoing their spells and casting out the evil forces. Aided by powerful fetishes in the Spirit Cave, the Seer quickly finds the magical solution for the curse his client is suffering from. The Lobi settled in this area in the 18th century, when they emigrated to the north, pushed along in their flight from more powerful tribes. They live on lands which are divided between Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Burkina Faso. Their villages are made up of several dwellings called soukalas, which are built alongside wells of drinking water. They are surrounded by farmland where the women raise millet, sorghum, and corn. Every home has an altar featuring ancestral fetishes. Amulets and other magical items can be found in every corner of the house. Each small town has its own religious leader who is responsible for guiding its inhabitants along the path of the Wur, a philosophy that leads to paradise in the great beyond. It consists of a series of rites that mark the various stages of life. The first step involves shaving one's head, showing that the initiate has left behind his former identity. The spiritual leader collects the ancestral fetishes of each initiate and carries them to the spot where the celebration will take place. The Wur is a sort of journey. For this reason, all rituals take place in the middle of trails, where a hole is dug that will be consecrated as an altar. The hole is then filled with the hair shaved from the head of each initiate, along with their fetishes. The next step is the sacrifice of several hens, one for each participant in the ceremony. This is one of the most important moments. The celebrant pours blood over the magical objects and casts the animals into the path, where he will interpret their death rattles. Traditionally, initiates were all the same age, but economic realities have also affected the practice of spiritual traditions. Only some of the young people who move to the city in search of work will return to follow the path of the Wur. The rite of initiation is a custom in many African societies. These are ceremonies of profound spiritual significance that lead to the inclusion of the younger generation in the adult world, with all its rights and responsibilities. The ceremony continues inside the house with the blessing of the family altar. The blessing requires pouring more blood over the fetishes, encouraging the spirits to bring good health, offspring, and food to the initiates. Several ceremonies are held before these altars each year, coinciding with the harvest, with births and weddings. But the most important of these is the initiation ceremony. Using the spilled blood, sand taken from the hole dug in the path, ashes and clay, ritual paints are mixed. These will be used to adorn the body of each initiate. Each clan has descended from a spirit that is considered the leader of their community. This spirit dictates its norms through a religious leader. For this reason, ceremonies differ from village to village, but their religious significance is the same for all of the Lobi people. The initiates leave the dwelling and join the rest of the community, who are waiting to celebrate the event. The entire village takes part in the festivities. Immediately after the ritual, the initiates are presented to the community. Family members and neighbors welcome them, presenting them with cowrie shells. The shells were once used as money in a good part of Western Africa. Today, their ritual value is still extremely high. Meanwhile, the officiants finish up preparations for the trail's new altar with offerings of food for the spirits. The Lobi people believe that they were thrown out of the Garden of Eden due to evils committed by the first human beings. A return to the garden can only be achieved with the help of the spirits, following Wur precepts. Before sunset, the initiates close up the altar with a simple ceremony. They take out their fetishes and fill the hole, now considered a magical spot. The family tomb is another sacred place, which can only be opened by gravediggers. Shots announce the death of a local woman. In Africa, news spreads like wildfire. Shortly after the announcement, hundreds of people come together to send off the deceased. The age, sex, and social rank of the deceased determine a series of norms that must be followed on the path of the Wur. In this case, the fallen is a childless woman. Her family has laid out the body surrounded by all her belongings. All the members of the community will send her off with shows of grief or with song and dance. For the Lobi, death is the end of the path of the Wur. The living encourage the dead with songs. The elders send her off with words of wisdom that will aid her as she journeys to the spirit world.